Timothy McVeigh's bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in 1995 killed 168 people and injured over 600. It was a Tuesday morning, April 19th, at exactly 9:02 a.m., when the calm of downtown Oklahoma City was shattered. A thunderous explosion ripped through the 9-story building, tearing away its entire north face. Office workers, clerks, military recruiters, and even children at the daycare inside were caught in an instant nightmare. Windows shattered for blocks, cars flipped, and dust filled the air like a storm of ash. Inside, people were pinned beneath concrete, crying out for help, or falling silent forever. In the wreckage, a rescuer heard the faint whimper of a child under twisted steel. He pushed forward, ignoring falling debris, but the sound suddenly stopped. Was it too late? If you think this is already unbearable, wait until you discover how one man's obsession led to this horror. Just hours earlier, the morning felt painfully ordinary. Workers carried coffee cups into the building, secretaries prepared paperwork, and parents kissed their children goodbye at the daycare, trusting they'd be safe. The smell of breakfast tacos and fresh bagels drifted from nearby cafes. No one suspected that death was rolling silently toward them on 4 Ryder truck wheels. Timothy McVeigh, a 27-year-old Gulf War veteran, was driving that truck. Cold, focused, and convinced he was on a mission of vengeance, he had spent months building a 5,000-pound homemade bomb. As the city woke up, he was whispering to himself, "Today they'll hear me." But what drove a decorated soldier to turn his rage against his own people? Timothy had not always been filled with hatred. Born in 1968 in Pendleton, New York, he grew up in a broken household, retreating into books and video games. But what set him apart was his obsession with firearms and survivalist fantasies. In the Army, he served with pride during the Gulf War. Fellow soldiers described him as disciplined, intelligent, even ambitious. But when his military career ended, he struggled to adjust. He drifted, bouncing between jobs, feeling like the government he once served had betrayed him. His anger began to fester. It was during this time that he discovered the Turner Diaries, a racist, anti-government novel that became his Bible. In those pages, Timothy saw not fiction but a plan. The question wasn't if he would act, it was when. In 1992, federal agents laid siege to a family compound in Ruby Ridge, Idaho. A year later, the infamous standoff at Waco, Texas, ended in flames, killing 76 men, women, and children. These moments shook America, but for Timothy McVeigh, they became personal vendettas. He visited the smoking ruins of Waco, selling bumper stickers that read "Remember Waco," and seething with rage at what he saw as government tyranny. Each tragedy fueled his belief that he was a soldier in a new kind of war. He shared his anger with Terry Nichols, an old Army friend. Together, they began planning something so large, so devastating, that they believed it would awaken the nation. On a calendar, McVeigh circled one date in red, April 19th, the second anniversary of Waco's fiery end. The countdown to destruction had begun. Their plan was chilling in its simplicity. They would build a bomb big enough to tear a federal building apart. Nichols helped acquire tons of ammonium nitrate fertilizer. McVeigh purchased fuel oil and blasting caps. They tested small explosives in Kansas, perfecting their recipe for mass murder. The Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City became their chosen target. To McVeigh, it symbolized the federal government he despised. He knew there was a daycare inside. He knew mothers dropped off toddlers every morning. And still, he didn't care. In his mind, they were collateral damage in his war against Washington. On April 17, 1995, McVeigh rented a Ryder truck under the false name Robert Kling. By April 18th, it was filled with 5,000 pounds of explosives. The bomb was ready. What McVeigh did next would stain American history forever. On the night of April 18, 1995, Timothy McVeigh parked the Ryder truck at a motel on the edge of town. He slept lightly, his gun within arm's reach. At dawn, he dressed in jeans, a t-shirt with the slogan "Sic Semper Tyrannis," Latin for "thus always to tyrants," and a windbreaker. Calmly, he climbed into the truck, every movement rehearsed in his mind. The streets of Oklahoma City were already alive with commuters, school buses, and pedestrians as McVeigh drove downtown. The weight of the bomb made the truck sway slightly, but he held the wheel steady. He parked directly in front of the Murrah Building, right beneath the daycare windows. With steady hands, he lit the 2 fuses and walked away. At 9:02 a.m., the bomb exploded. The city shook as if an earthquake had struck. Glass flew like knives, concrete slabs crushed cars, and smoke rose like a black mushroom cloud. Survivors staggered into the streets, faces covered in blood and dust, clutching one another in shock. But McVeigh wasn't done. He had planned his escape. After the blast, McVeigh didn't run. He strolled toward his getaway car parked blocks away, blending in with stunned bystanders. While hundreds screamed and wept, he slipped behind the wheel of his yellow Mercury Marquis and drove off. He believed he had just ignited a revolution. Back at the Murrah Building, chaos reigned. Firefighters and police rushed in, digging through the rubble with bare hands. They pulled children from the collapsed daycare, some alive, most lifeless. Across the city, hospitals filled instantly, doctors working without pause. Among the debris, 68-year-old Eleanor Parker, a retired teacher who had gone to the Social Security office that morning, lay pinned under concrete. She whispered for help, her voice fading. A rescuer heard her faint plea and pushed deeper into the wreckage, praying he wouldn't cause more collapse. And while heroes fought to save lives, a single traffic stop would change everything. Just 90 minutes after the explosion, State Trooper Charles Hanger noticed a beat-up yellow Mercury without a license plate on Highway 35. He pulled the car over. Inside sat Timothy McVeigh, calm and collected. Hanger saw a bulge under McVeigh's jacket, a loaded Glock pistol. McVeigh was arrested for carrying a concealed weapon. At the time, no one knew the quiet man in handcuffs was America's most wanted terrorist. He gave his name, his voice flat, showing no fear. Back in Oklahoma City, FBI agents combed through the rubble. In the twisted wreckage of the Ryder truck, they found the rear axle intact, its serial number visible. That number traced back to a rental company. And the name on the rental? Robert Kling, an alias tied directly to Timothy McVeigh. The net was closing fast, but McVeigh still had no regrets. As the news spread, Americans sat glued to their televisions. The images were unbearable: firefighters carrying tiny bodies wrapped in sheets, parents collapsing in grief, and volunteers forming human chains to clear debris. President Bill Clinton addressed the nation, vowing justice. Survivors like Eleanor Parker clung to life in hospitals. Families gathered at makeshift shelters, waiting for word on loved ones still trapped. The death toll rose by the hour, and with it, anger. This wasn't a foreign attack, it was homegrown, carried out by one of their own. FBI agents officially linked McVeigh to the bombing. His fingerprints matched rental documents. A search of his car revealed maps, anti-government literature, and receipts for ammonium nitrate. He had left a trail, and now it was unraveling. But when interrogated, McVeigh's words stunned investigators even more than the evidence. In custody, McVeigh showed no remorse. He spoke with chilling calm, saying the bombing was retaliation for Waco and Ruby Ridge. He described the victims as collateral damage. To him, the children in the daycare were tragic, but necessary sacrifices. The FBI built a rock-solid case: receipts, witness statements, fingerprints, and Nichols' cooperation all tied McVeigh to the attack. Families of victims filled courtrooms, their faces etched with grief and fury. Survivors recounted their trauma. Eleanor Parker took the stand, describing the darkness under the rubble, the screams, and the silence that followed. The jury deliberated, but their decision was swift. McVeigh was found guilty of murder, conspiracy, and use of a weapon of mass destruction. He stared ahead, expressionless, as the verdict was read. But the story didn't end there. McVeigh was sentenced to death, but some believed his execution would never bring true justice. McVeigh's trial became one of the most watched in American history. Families traveled from across the nation to attend, some clutching photos of loved ones, others holding each other for strength. Testimonies painted vivid pictures of the horror: a firefighter describing carrying a child who never woke, a mother recounting the moment she realized her baby was gone. But McVeigh never shed a tear. He never apologized. He sat upright, stone-faced, and even smirked at times. The coldness rattled jurors and infuriated victims' families. He wanted to be remembered as a soldier, not a criminal. Yet behind bars, the walls of isolation began to close in, and the countdown to justice ticked louder every day. In prison, McVeigh spent his days reading military history and writing letters. To some extremists on the outside, he became a twisted hero, a martyr for their cause. But for the majority of Americans, He was nothing but a killer who had shattered families and scarred a nation. Meanwhile, survivors tried to rebuild. Eleanor Parker, still recovering from her injuries, struggled with nightmares. She could no longer walk without a cane. Yet she refused to sink into despair. She began volunteering at local schools, warning children about the dangers of hate and extremism. Her voice trembled, but her message was clear: one man's anger can destroy hundreds of lives. As McVeigh's execution date approached, the nation braced for one final chapter in his story. June 11, 2001, dawned clear and bright in Terre Haute, Indiana. Inside the federal prison, Timothy McVeigh prepared to die by lethal injection. Reporters gathered outside, broadcasting live to millions of viewers. Families of victims watched from behind glass, their emotions a mix of anger, grief, and weary relief. McVeigh walked into the chamber without hesitation. He refused to make a final statement. His eyes remained cold, distant, detached. At 7:14 a.m., the chemicals flowed. Within minutes, his chest rose one last time, then stilled. The man who killed 168 people was gone. But as silence filled the chamber, many wondered, did justice feel like enough? For some families, McVeigh's death brought closure. For others, it was hollow. Nothing could bring back their children, their parents, their spouses. The Oklahoma City bombing had left scars that even time could not heal. Survivors struggled with PTSD, broken marriages, and financial hardships. Communities leaned on each other, but the pain never fully disappeared. Eleanor Parker stood at the Oklahoma City National Memorial, tears in her eyes as she traced the names carved into stone. For her, healing meant teaching others to choose empathy over anger, love over hate. "We can't erase what he did," she whispered, "but we can decide what kind of people we become after." And that truth carried a weight that would outlive McVeigh himself. Today, the site of the Murrah Building is a place of reflection. Rows of empty chairs represent the lives lost, each one illuminated at night. The smallest chairs, 19 of them, are for the children killed in the daycare. Visitors come from across the world to stand in silence, to remember, to promise never to forget. The bombing remains the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in U.S. history. It serves as a chilling reminder of how hatred, left unchecked, can turn into violence. McVeigh wanted to be a symbol of rebellion, but instead, he became a warning. The lesson is clear: anger and revenge may feel powerful, but they destroy far more than they heal. True strength lies in compassion, in choosing to protect rather than destroy, in building bridges instead of bombs. Every choice we make carries weight, and the wrong choice can shatter hundreds of lives. And so the dark truth behind the Oklahoma City bombing is this: evil can grow in silence, but so can kindness. The question is, which one will we choose to feed? Call to action: if this story moved you, share it, reflect on it, and remember the lives lost. Never let hate be louder than love.